bark in the dark. Detective. John Carter stared at the map pinned to his office wall, red markers dotting the city like a pox. Each one represented a life cut short, a body found partially eaten. The string of killings had baffled the police for months, and with each new victim, the pressure mounted. The shrill ring of his phone cut through the late-night silence. John snatched it up, his voice gruff from too many cigarettes and too little sleep. "Carter here." "We've got another one, John," came the weary voice of his partner, Mike. "Same M.O. as the others." John's jaw clenched. "I'm on my way." The crime scene was a grim tableau, sickeningly familiar. The victim, a middle-aged man, lay sprawled in an alley, his throat torn out. What remained of his body bore the unmistakable marks of teeth, large, canine teeth. "Dogs again?" John asked the forensics tech crouched over the body. She shook her head, puzzled. "That's the thing, Detective. These bites? They're not quite right for a dog. The spacing, the depth, it's off somehow." John's brow furrowed. It wasn't the first time he'd heard this. He needed answers, and he knew just where to start looking. The next morning found him at the door of Dr. Sarah Chen, the city's top veterinary forensics expert. Her eyes widened as she examined the photos John had brought. "You see it too, don't you?" John pressed. Sarah nodded slowly. "These bites, they're not fully canine. There's something almost human about them." A chill ran down John's spine. "What are you saying, Doc?" Before Sarah could answer, the clinic door chimed. A striking woman entered, leading an enormous black dog on a leash. The animal's eyes locked onto John, and for a moment he could have sworn he saw something disturbingly intelligent in that gaze. "I'm sorry," the woman said, her voice melodious. "I hope we're not interrupting." "Not at all," Sarah replied, but John barely heard her. He was transfixed by the dog, which hadn't taken its eyes off him. As the woman and her pet left, John shook himself out of his daze. "I need to follow up on something," he muttered to Sarah, already heading for the door. For days, John tailed the mysterious woman and her dog. He watched them enter their upscale apartment, observed their daily routines. Nothing seemed amiss, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial. It was on the fourth night of his stakeout that everything changed. As the full moon rose over the city, John watched in disbelief as the dog began to change. Its form twisted and elongated, fur receding, until where the animal had stood there was now a man. John's mind reeled. It was impossible, and yet he had seen it with his own eyes. He drew his gun, approaching cautiously. "New York Police Department! Freeze!" he shouted. The man, creature, whirled to face him. In the moonlight, John could see the vestiges of the dog in his features, the sharp teeth, the slightly elongated jaw. "You don't understand," the man said, his voice a low growl. "I have no choice." "You're killing people," John replied, his gun unwavering. "There's always a choice." The man, Alex, John would later learn, shook his head. "I was cursed, trapped in the form of a dog. The only way to become human again is to consume human flesh. With each kill, I regain a little more of my humanity." John's finger tightened on the trigger. "And how many more have to die before you're satisfied?" "Just one more," Alex pleaded. "One more, and the curse will be broken. Please, you have to understand. I can't live as a dog forever." For a moment, John hesitated. It was insane, all of it. Werewolves, curses, these things didn't exist in the real world. And yet, he had seen the transformation with his own eyes. In that moment of indecision, Alex lunged. John fired, but the bullet went wide. They grappled, rolling on the ground. Alex's teeth snapped inches from John's throat, and the detective realized with horror that he was no match for the creature's supernatural strength. Just as John felt his arms beginning to give way, a voice rang out. "Stop!" Both men froze. Sarah stood there, holding what looked like an ancient amulet. "This can break the curse," she said, her voice shaking, "without killing anyone else." Alex's eyes widened with hope and fear. "How did you—" "I've been researching," Sarah explained. "Ever since I saw those bite marks, I knew something wasn't right. I found references to an old curse, a punishment that trapped a person in animal form. This amulet is said to break it." John looked between Sarah and Alex, his mind struggling to process it all. "If this works," he said to Alex, "you'll turn yourself in. Pay for the lives you've taken." Alex nodded solemnly. "I'll do anything to be human again. To end this nightmare." With trembling hands, Sarah placed the amulet around Alex's neck. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a blinding light erupted from the artifact. John and Sarah shielded their eyes. When the glow faded, Alex stood before them, fully human. The vestiges of the dog were gone from his features. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "It's over," he whispered. "It's finally over." As John cuffed Alex, reading him his rights, he caught Sarah's eye. There was a world of questions in that look, a sense that the reality they thought they knew had been forever altered. In the days that followed, John struggled to write his report. How could he possibly explain what had happened? In the end, he stuck to the facts. A serial killer had been apprehended. The dog angle was left out entirely. But on quiet nights, when the moon was full, John found himself looking out his window, watching the shadows. He knew now that there were things in this world beyond his understanding. And he wondered what other secrets lurked in the darkness, waiting to be brought to light. As he sipped his coffee, a chill ran down his spine. Somewhere in the distance, he could have sworn he heard a wolf howl.